Well, I'm a man from Leeds, England, United Kingdom. I'm 25. I'm a chef. I'm single. I have a mother, 2 sisters, and I'm someone that wanted to help Edna's Hospital in Somaliland. Originally, I'd been introduced through a friend of mine. She was fundraising for Edna's Hospital, and I was showing an interest in what she was doing. I was just curious. So I looked into what Edna's Hospital was about. I looked at her website. I read a book called Half the Sky, How to Change the World. It was almost love at first sight. When I first started reading, I remember feeling emotional. I remember feeling almost to the point where I felt like crying, because I was just so amazed by Edna's strength and willingness to want to make her country a better place by helping the people around, especially the women. And I was hooked. I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to do my portion to help Edna's work continue and to help the hospital to continue to thrive, because it's not just Edna, it's so many more people than that. It's the doctors, it's the people that built it, it's the nurses, it's the accountants, it's the receptionists, the cleaners, it's everything, the hospital isn't one person, it's many people. My initial idea was I would walk from southwest France to the most western point in Spain and back. This was a famous walk called the Camino de Santiago, a pilgrimage. I didn't feel that enough had been done. I thought it had been wasted almost in what I wanted to achieve for Edna. So I went back to the drawing board, as it were, and I started to think again. And I'd wanted to come to Edna's Hospital. I wanted to meet Edna. I wanted to see Somaliland. And this was a dream of mine from the moment I started reading. So I decided to start from Cairo, Egypt. This was a good starting point, I thought, and this was my decision. So I spent a year planning, training, and trying to raise some kind of awareness. Unfortunately, I got some awareness, but not much. People just didn't want to know. They didn't believe that it could be done. They thought it was a pointless task. They thought it was too dangerous and just impossible. So I continued anyway. I believed in the journey. I believed in Edna. I believed in the hospital, and in doing that, I believed in Somaliland. I'd read about Edna, I'd read about the hospital, but you can't read about these things without reading about Somaliland. Everything that is involved in Somaliland is very patriotic. There's no shying away from where they come from. And I understood of Somaliland's struggle in the past and what the people of Somaliland have overcome and grown to be and built to what is Somaliland today and can be in the future. 9th of September 2012, I arrived in Cairo, and I met American David Adams, who was to be my cameraman, as it were, and companion for the journey, and also a man called Adel Hamza, an Egyptian man who was to organise a camel for the 2 of us. The camel was a decision I'd been encouraged to make was by friends, because the areas I'm going through, the desert terrain, they're sparse, they're dangerous. Some areas there's no towns, little water, little food, and so for me to carry enough water and food to survive, it just would have been impossible. And walking these distances alone is difficult, believe me, and to carry this kind of weight was not something I could take lightly. So we got the camel and we set off. We set off from Cairo and we headed south for Aswan. And in I think maybe 5-6 weeks we overcome Egypt with little hassle. We had good backing from the police. We'd had lots of help from my good friend Edel Hamza, and we made it to Aswan. But that was when our problems started to arise. It turns out that, and we'd heard snippets of this on our way, but it became apparent in Aswan that the camel, because camels are a major export for Sudan, they weren't happy about a camel to come into the country because they felt that maybe I would try and sell it or something like this. So there was no way they were going to let a camel come in. David Adams, being an American, and the relationships between Sudan and America have broken down at the moment. They weren't happy about an American entering the country. Americans can enter the country, but you have to have help from your embassies, which we didn't have at the time. So he also left, and I had to continue alone. Sudan, after 2-3 days, physically broke me. I felt like the decision to do this journey was a ridiculous one. I felt that the people that had told me not to do this were right, that it wasn't possible, and I was naive to think it was. I was dehydrated, I was hungry, I was ridiculously hot and exhausted. I remember being in tears and not being able to move. So I started to think about Edna, I started to think about the hospital, I started to think about Somaliland. So with strength of mind I continued into Ethiopia and found a new challenge in my third country. Both Egypt and Sudan had been flat, perfectly flat for me, you know, very little hills, and this was fine. But when you're carrying 80 kilos or pulling 80 kilos and you have to go uphill, things start to change. And Ethiopia doesn't have hills, it has mountains. And some of these mountains that I would be climbing were over 14,000 feet. This is, I can assure you, above clouds. And this, what I'd thought was the most difficult thing in Sudan had suddenly become even more difficult in Ethiopia. I enter Djibouti fresh-faced and feeling positive. My first day walking, I managed to walk 45 kilometers. This is kind of an average that I was walking each day, you know. Some days it could have been 30, some days 50, even some days I'd try for 60, but 45 was a good day. So I finished my day, I set up camp, and all was good, all was well. I was all smiles and happy. Next morning, set off and start my day. A couple of kilometers and I'm into a small town, Yaboki, and a couple of police call me over, and, well, police, they're gendarmes. They called me over, and I was kind of used to this kind of asking questions because it was a bizarre thing to see, you know, a guy just walking, pulling some kind of vehicle that I'm not sure what it is, and they want to ask questions. And I had dirty clothes, long hair, beard. I could have been anybody, so I understood. So the following morning, around 5 a.m., I'm woken up and put into the back of a vehicle with another prisoner. Again, he's got handcuffs on, I don't, but I still don't see the difference apart from those two things. Apart from they keep saying to me, no problem, but I don't know who they're trying to kid, me or themselves. They brought me I asked for some food, which I had to pay for, of course, and they brought me some spaghetti, but it was in a plastic bag, just in a plastic bag, so I'm sitting eating my spaghetti like a dog out of my plastic bag. And eventually a general comes, and this is an educated man, I can see straight away, speaking very well-pronounced English. And he asks for details from what my story is from start to finish, dates, everything. So I do this, and I give him exact dates, and I make a point of giving him exact dates. Why? Because on my passport, every stamp of when I've entered and exited the country, there is a stamp saying that date. It's perfect proof. He has my passport, I don't have it, so how am I going to memorize these dates? They're there. So I said his exact dates and how and why and do that. And then I say, I've got a website. You look on the internet, you type my name into something, you'll find something that resembles what I'm doing. I say, I'm Edna. I've got Edna's phone number. You can call Edna now. She knows what I'm doing. She knows who I am. She's like, oh, you know Edna? I was like, yeah, you call her. You call her and you ask her who Christopher Stanfield is. I see his face drop and he starts to understand what's going on, and he looks sorry, he looks bad, and I can see this in his eyes, and he says, okay, I think there's been a problem here. I say, yes, I think so too. So an hour later I have to same written out and printed, and they let me go. And this was actually New Year's Eve, so thankfully that evening I was able to get out and not have to spend 2013 at the beginning in a prison cell. So I set off for Somaliland. This is my finish. This is my time. And Edna, she walked me to a hospital that I had been thinking about for 2 years. Stood next to a woman that I'd been admiring for 2 years. I'm sure there's many people I've admired for much longer than I have, but those have been 2 years of sheer admiration, and it was my dream come true to be seeing her and seeing this hospital. And also seeing Somaliland. I hope it will inspire other operations similar to do the same, to take her example and improve on it, duplicate it, whatever. And also the same with Somaliland, because it's directly involved with Somaliland. I want other countries, developing countries, countries in Africa, to look towards Somaliland and say, okay, you've got a wonderful country here, a country that has been developing over the past few years at a very rapid rate, from civil war to what it is now. It's wonderful, but it's not finished by a long way. There's still so much to be done, and now the youth, it's on your shoulders. It's in your hands now to make sure that growth keeps on happening. One of you are capable. I know, I've met so many young people here. I've talked to students, and I've seen it in their eyes. Every single one of them are intelligent, wonderful young people and capable of building their country.